Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Today is a very special podcast because we have Michael Riesman, the musical director of the Philip Glass Ensemble, as well as conductor and composer. Anyway, thank you for coming on, Michael. It's a great pleasure to talk to you.
It's my pleasure to be with you too.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just start with what's your musical background like?
Uh, I started out um, going to, well, I started out as a kid playing piano at the age of 6. Then growing up through high school, attending various music camps in the summer, playing chamber music, playing piano and organ, and I learned the oboe. And then finally, when I got out of high school, I had one abbreviated year at the University of Chicago without knowing what I was going to do. And then I decided to go to music school. I went to Mannes College of Music in New York, got a degree there, and I studied composition and conducting. I didn't study piano, but I was proficient already.
Mm,
And then at that point, I decided that, well, I was a composer and a conductor, but I didn't see myself having a classical career or really being able to make money as a composer. To make money as a composer, if you're not doing some kind of commercial work, um,
right, right.
you have to survive by getting grants and commissions, and it's very tough to live on that kind of an income. So I decided the best solution for me was to become a professor.
Mm,
So I went on to Harvard University and I got a graduate degree in composition, a master's degree, and then finally a PhD. And then I started teaching. My teaching career began at the State University of New York in Purchase, New York. But I only lasted a year at that because I wasn't happy being a teacher after going through all that school and finally getting on the end of it and the other end of it being a teacher. I wasn't happy. I wanted to do something more adventurous and exciting, and I decided I would take a chance, quit my teaching job, and I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. But that's how my professional career really began at that point.
mm, did you meet Philip Glass at Chicago in Chicago?
No, we weren't there at the same time. He was there before I was. Um, so there was no overlap. He's a few years older than I am. And but I did meet him in New York. I decided when I was teaching at that year at Purchase, I was living in the city. I wanted to live in New York City, and I would commute out, wrong way commute, go out to Westchester to teach. And
Mm,
at that time, I was living in Soho, and I got to know a number of people in the scene in New York, the downtown scene. Um, I met socially, and at parties and openings, and developed a circle of friends there. And I had met Philip Glass at that time before I ever started working with him. This would have been in 1972, 3, in that
mm.
period. And it was,
Which the ensemble started before that, right?
yes, the
Yeah.
ensemble started before that.
Mm,
And I went to concerts by the ensemble in that period of 72, 73. Um, I remember going to a concert in a loft on Bleecker Street where they were playing parts of music in 12 parts. And then I attended the premiere of the full music in 12 parts at Town Hall in the spring of 1974.
mm,
That summer, um, in this period, I had also been doing various solo performances around town. I was an improviser doing solo piano, and I had done a show in a gallery at 112 Green Street in New York that had been attended by some people in the ensemble, at least one person, Dickie Landry, who was the first wind chair in the ensemble,
mm,
heard me play that concert. And the summer of 1974, the keyboard player, there were only two keyboard players in the Philip Glass Ensemble at the time, Philip and one other person. That keyboard player, by the name of Bob Telson, decided in the summer of 74 that he didn't want to work with the ensemble anymore. He was a composer also, wanted to go off and do his own thing.
mm, mm,
And with not much notice, he left Philip in the lurch for an upcoming tour in the fall of 1974. And Philip started kind of casting around and asking friends who might be a good person to invite into the ensemble. And he heard about me from a couple of people who said, "Well, what about this guy Riesman?" You know, and so
mm,
I met. Philip called me up and he said, "Would you like to audition for a role in the ensemble in this upcoming tour in October?" And this is already like September. And I said, "Sure." And I met with him at the loft downtown where he had a rehearsal room set up on Reed Street, and went down there and we played music together. I was basically sight reading from music in 12 parts.
mm,
And he was satisfied that I was going to be able to do it. And I got the gig on the spot. He didn't make any promises beyond this initial fall tour that was from Berlin to Paris to Rome, Amsterdam. We went through,
mm. Yeah, just
um, major European capitals on that tour. And um, that was that was it. Basically, he had made no promises, but the next time there was something to do, I was invited again, and pretty soon became obvious that I was there to stay.
mm, mm. Wow. So what were your initial thoughts on the music itself?
Well, I was interested in this kind of. It wasn't so much the formulas of Philip Glass, the repetitive arpeggios and figures. What appealed to me was the sort of ritualistic nature of it. That it became a whole. The Philip Glass Ensemble concert became an experience uh, akin, I would say, to an African drumming ritual or something, where everybody's really getting into it. I mean, people are getting high on weed and we did too as performers. We were into that whole, um, get it totally absorbed by the music uh, frame of mind. And this is what appealed to me the most. Um, I appreciated the erudition of Philip's sense of harmony and rhythm and counterpoint that went into creating these cells. The music that I was most familiar with was what I was playing at the beginning of my experience with Philip, music in 12 parts, which is, a kind of an epic encapsulation of all of his techniques of writing in cells, meaning there's a unit that is repeated for a certain length of time, arbitrary length of time, that's then moved beyond to the next unit in the score. And each of the 12 parts has maybe between 20 and 36 individual cells um, that are repeated,
Mm,
you know, for each part um, for a duration of about 15 minutes per part. Um, and so the repetitions of each cell might be 10 times, a dozen times, 8 times,
mm,
or something like that, so that it comes out to a length like that. Um, and this was what appealed to me the most was how you know deeply one could get into one of these rhythmic patterns and how precisely they could be played as a performer and how as a listener you would be entranced. I remember when I went to hear the performance of the complete music in 12 parts at town hall. I was astonished. How can they keep doing it? How do they do that? Why don't they get lost? You know, this was the sort of the virtuosic impression of what the Philip Glass Ensemble made on the listeners, which was, on one level, it was involving in kind of a psychoacoustic trance, you might say. On the other hand, you're listening to something and you're wondering, how can they do that? How can they keep doing that? And of course, once I started playing it, I could see, well, yeah, it takes a great deal of concentration, is what it takes.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, with music in 12 parts, um, I'm just kind of curious about like, did he have any tricks as far as like how the counterpoint flowed or how uh how he would choose certain harmonies or do you know if he had any like tools that he used or was that more arbitrary
Well,
or
um,
not
that's a
arbitrary but intuitive but sorry.
that's a good question, but no, he didn't have any tricks. What he had, he had a background and a strict background with, especially having studied with Nadia Boulanger in Paris, a strict background in traditional harmony and counterpoint studies. So he drew on that background when he was creating music in 12 parts. I mean, his very earliest minimalist pieces didn't have any counterpoint, didn't have any harmony. They were like monophonic lines. Um, and
Mm,
then he started expanding that to play music in a group. And the earliest pieces, again, were kind of like unison. I mean, music in fifths is an early piece, music in similar motion. These are pieces that don't have any counterpoint. They
right, right.
have they have kind of a residual harmony, but no harmonic changes. So um, uh, with music in 12 parts, he took a different tack of actually writing contrapuntal music with different lines, playing different rhythms, and so on. Right in part one, the first music in 12 parts, the first one, which he wrote as an individual piece. Um, and it only occurred to him later that he would expand
Mm,
what part one was, which was uh, 12 lines of music simultaneous. So the 12 parts were actually 12 separate contrapuntal lines. Then he got the idea to expand to 12 pieces, 12 individual pieces. So, but that wasn't the original uh, intent of music in 12 parts. It's what it became.
mm,
The perhaps apocryphal story is that Philip got approached after the first performance of music in 12 parts part, which was just the first, what eventually became 12 parts. After that performance, somebody came up to me and said, well, that was great. When are you going to write the next 11? And apparently that gave him the idea. Maybe a true story.
mm, mm, mm. Wow, yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess so. So with music in 12 parts, like I um, I understand that there wasn't exactly a score written, if I'm correct. Like it was written in separate parts. Is that true, or do I got that wrong?
No, that's not quite true. There there was a score,
Mm.
at least of part one. I wonder with the other parts, was that possible that I can research this while we're talking.
Okay.
Um, let me open a manuscript database here,
Mm-hmm.
and because this is an interesting question. Was there was there was there actually a score? There must have been a score. Here's part one score. Part two. Well, that's interesting. That could be true. There's no
Mm.
score. He wrote out the other parts. He had what he did have is a shorthand notation
Mm.
where he wrote the rhythm of each cell in a shorthand notation. So
Mm.
and then he wrote out
Like it would be a stave with like a number of how many times or.
number. Yes. Well, he
Mm.
would, without actually writing any notes at all. He just wrote the rhythms that he wanted to use for
Oh,
that
okay.
particular cell, and like a 2 plus 3 and please 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2 or something like that. But he knew what the harmonies he was going to use were. Music in 12 parts has pretty static harmonies in each piece. That there's a limited number of notes for each cell,
Mm.
and so I'm just looking through this manuscript now.
Yeah.
What I'm finding like the part I used to play from, which is as much of a score as there was, I guess, because if my part would have had the elements of everybody else's part as well,
Mm.
in terms of the rhythmic elements and harmonic elements. So um, there was a guy, his name was Glenn Lemieux, who wrote his doctoral thesis on piecing together the score of music in 12 parts, which he
Mm.
did from the parts. And um, yeah, I think that's true. Only part one definitely has a score from beginning to end.
Mm. Mm.
Sorry,
Okay.
I took so much time digging through
I know you're
to
okay.
find the answer to that question.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, so now I'm just thinking, like, was there so as far as the cells go, was it more like um was there like individual cells for like specific instruments, or was it more so like um a cell for like a cell that correlates with everybody?
Uh, it's a cell that correlates with everybody. Individual cells. I mean, people played because it was contrapuntal. People had different rhythms. Some people played longer notes, and some people played shorter notes, like
Yeah.
um, against like a moving eighth notes. Philip never wrote all of music in 12 parts is written in eighth notes, quarter notes, and other longer notes, dotted quarters, halves, and so on. Um, uh, so some
Mm.
parts had combinations of note lengths, and other parts were just constant eighth notes. Um, a lot of my parts have at least constant eighth notes in the left hand, sometimes rhythmic parts in the right hand, sometimes constant eighth notes in both hands. So um, if I'm always playing with somebody. Somebody else is doing what I'm doing. But sometimes there are people that are doing something that I don't have at all in my part. Like in part eight, I'm playing eighth notes in both hands all the way through. Other people are playing notes of all different lengths that are against the eighth notes, including starting with very long notes, and gradually they get shorter and shorter and shorter until everybody's also mostly playing eighth notes.
Mm,
So each cell is a combination of different parts doing different note values and different harmonies. So um, it is there's har harmonies involve notes of a chord, and counterpoint involves different motion within those notes. So each cell has a combination of harmony and counterpoint, and they kind of evolve from one to the next with subtle changes. This is part of the magic of a piece like Part Eight, which in particular, uh, in the later sections of Part Eight, there is like a change of one or two notes between one cell and the next, and something gets added or something gets taken away. There's like the expansion and then the contraction, and
mm,
it's thrilling when um, what we're doing with that, and particularly that part, is appreciated by the audience. I remember one of the most exciting concerts from the stage that ever we played was in Porto in Portugal, when we were playing part eight, and the audience understood exactly what was going on, and they would applaud each of the changes from one cell to the next like it was a jazz solo. And it was very exciting for us to say, "Oh,
wow.
they're really getting it." We were looking around at each other. Yeah, they really got it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, so like, did it ever cross your mind, I guess, um, of like why, I guess just the reason of why, like of that this like your part, for instance, could be so monotonous, um, for playing for long periods of time. Um, like did you ever think, oh, this may be like a little bland, or any thought like that?
Uh, well, no, I never really had that thought. It was the concerts were always exciting.
Hmm.
No, I mean, one thing, it's not so much fun just to practice by myself, which I do in preparation for a concert. So just playing my part all by itself, um, you know, I asked my wife, do you want me to put the headphones on? And she says, no, no, she likes to listen to it. I said, I couldn't stand to listen to it, just this part by itself. But
Yeah.
uh, it's when it all comes together, when the ensemble gets together, and especially right now, the ensemble is, we're playing basically the group that we now have is the most technically proficient that it's ever been.
Mm,
Philip isn't playing with us anymore, but we have myself and Mick Rossi, who's phenomenal on keyboards, Andrew Sturman, and Sam Sadegurski, and Peter Hess on reeds and flutes, and they're all just so good. It's so terrific. And Lisa Belava as a singer and keyboard player, she is phenomenal. So I mean, it's an amazing group, and we're still touring quite a bit, even after Philip dropped out, which he did in 2019. He said, "I'm not going to do this anymore." We said, "Well, can we keep going?" Yes, we can keep going. The pandemic caused a lot of problems at first, but we're busy now. We're doing like 3 tours to Europe this year. I mean,
Yeah.
that's and we're going to the West Coast in a month for the second trip in the U.S. this year after being in the Big Ears Festival in Kentucky a while back. So yeah, we're still running around a lot and playing in New York City as well. We played this spring. We did a Koyaanisqatsi concert at Town Hall. Uh,
Mm.
we've we're doing the music with the films, the Qatsi trilogy, Koyaanisqatsi, Poakatsi, Nakakatsi. We're still doing a significant number of those concerts and the regular PGE concerts with complete music in 12 parts, which is what we did in Tennessee or said in Knoxville. Um,
Mm.
and we did also complete 12 parts in Geneva last year. So it's been busy,
Yeah, yeah.
busy season, a couple of seasons since 20, starting in 22, we started touring again, 23, 24, and this year.
Mm. Uh, where on the West Coast do you think you'll be going?
Well, that's interesting. We haven't been to California in a while. We've been lately in Portland and Seattle is going to be our next visit. Uh, we're playing Koyaanisqatsi again with the
Mm.
film in Seattle as a guest of the Seattle Symphony, but we're
Wow.
not using the symphony. We sometimes do it with orchestra. This is just going to be the ensemble, and that's coming up in about a week, actually. We're leaving next week.
Mm-mm. Yeah, yeah, because I've always wanted to see you guys and haven't had the chance to yet. But
Um, well, I'm sure we'll get back to LA. Where are you located? What city?
yeah, LA.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll get back to LA. We were, regularly invited to LA, usually at the under the auspices of UCLA. Um, and we played many times at Royce Hall, Veteran Hall. Um, and of course, we've done shows under the auspices of the Opera House and Disney Hall. We've
Mm.
played, you know, we did Einstein on the Beach at the opera there, and we've also played places like the what's the name of that theater that used to be the Universal Artists Theater downtown, an old movie theater where we've done some shows there as well. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Mm-mm.
so we'll be back in LA at some point, but I guess it always depends on having a sponsor there.
Mm.
We depend on local sponsors for invitations, and we've been to the Hollywood Bowl a couple of times. Um, but our sponsor, biggest one of our big fans, was the director of Cal Performances at UCLA, um, Christy Edmonds, and she left that job. I don't know if she got fired or she just departed. And so we've been following her around the world. Wherever she gets a job, then we get to play there.
Mm-mm.
She went to Australia, Melbourne, and most recently she's been and she came to New York to program at the Armory, and we played there. She came to Mass MoCA Museum of Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art in North Adams, and she invited us to go there last summer. So yeah, but we need somebody in LA to bring us out there again.
Yeah. Mm-mm. Well, this I guess this brings up a interesting thing. I mean, sometimes yeah, and I think about as far as like West Coast, East Coast. Um, do you think do you think I mean, I've heard some people say that like um if you're like based in the West Coast and you have shows in the West Coast, it's harder to get stuff done in the East Coast and vice versa. If you're in the East Coast, it's harder to get stuff done in the West Coast. Like, is that, or do you think that's a true thing, or
Uh, I don't know. I don't, it could be because I'm not so much involved in arranging anything. I mean, other people are doing that. So
right,
I
right.
couldn't really answer that.
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, but I read that you studied with Darius Milhaud.
Milo is how you pronounce it. Yes.
Yeah, Milhaud.
Um, you don't pronounce the H or the D. Milo. Anyway,
Mm,
uh, yes, he was. I went to Aspen one summer,
mm,
and he was teaching there. The Aspen Music Festival I attended as a student there, 1967.
mm. Yeah.
So that was just for a couple of months in the summer. I must say,
Okay.
he wasn't so much a teacher. I mean, he didn't like to look at students' work and criticize it. What he did like to do is tell stories, which was very entertaining, and talk about music, which was educational. But he wasn't like standing over you and saying, no, that's not a good measure you wrote, or that is a good measure you wrote. He wasn't that kind of a teacher.
Mm. So what was he like inspiring to you?
Well, I mean, he was inspiring in that he was a really a great composer, and I was a little bit in awe of him. But um,
Yeah. Mm.
I can't say that he really taught me much, but I enjoyed being around him.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you tend to hear that with famous composers like that. Um, I'm not. I know I've heard similar things about George Crumb. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah. Um, so with actually with like something like Einstein on the Beach. Um, um, which if everyone doesn't know, it's an opera, but you probably do know anyway. So with that piece, do you think it was a similar way of composing as far as like as in regard to music in 12 parts?
Well, Einstein on the Beach added another element that wasn't in music in 12 parts. It was well, much of it was a similar way of composing, structured in these cells, but
Mm,
it added another element, which was there were actually melodies set on top of the underlying structures, um, so that it was kind of adding another dimension um, in many cases. Um, that
yeah.
it uh, it it wasn't a totally significant departure from the earlier music in 12 parts, but he was dealing also much more with, you know, he had a chorus, he had soloists in the chorus, he had a violin, and
Mm,
this is on top of what the ensemble had become with music in 12 parts. Uh, so it was he had a more orchestrated kind of environment to write in, and expanded his vocabulary accordingly. So but not any dramatic change from what had
Yeah.
been
Mm.
what he had developed with music in 12 parts.
Mm.
It's only a couple of years later. I mean, 12 parts was finished in 1974, premiered then. Einstein was developed during 1976 and premiered in 1976.
Mm.
So um,
It's very fast.
it was, it was not that much of a change for him.
Mm. Um, so yeah, I guess continue on like with because I mean I understand like after Einstein on the Beach he kind of resetted his his way of working a little bit like with I mean it's a little later but I mean like Koyaanisqatsi um
Koyaanisqatsi, yes.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
that was a major development beyond what he had done in Einstein. And Koyaanisqatsi actually he started adding brass. That was the main difference. Like, so there's the ensemble, and you know, from Einstein, an ensemble with singers, chorus. Well, that's in Koyaanisqatsi. But then the next development was he started writing pieces for brass, basically trumpets, trombones, French horns, and um, this was they weren't playing the fast notes anymore. They were playing chordal rhythms, um, and or chordal or melodies. So um,
Mm.
this was a Koyaanisqatsi starts to approach being a more classical kind of music in that way, and that we have an orchestra, we have a I mean, Koyaanisqatsi only had a limited string section, but nevertheless, they were playing music that was, you know, it was not structured in cells anymore, basically, not in the
Yeah.
same way. I mean, there are parts of Koyaanisqatsi that um, are a little bit like cells, but no, he's dealing in bigger structures at this point. He's dealing in 4 bar, 8 bar, 12 bar, 16 bar phrases now, and not cells. And repeated sections, are longer that way than in the original, like his style of music in 12 parts. These cells could be, just, 4 beats long and 4 quarter notes long. Or in the later music, the structures get bigger. The orchestra gets bigger.
Yeah.
The range, let's see, I've got a call that I'm not going to answer. Um, the range, the range, so like a top to bottom orchestra of a piccolo trumpet on the top and a super tuba like synthesizer on the bottom. Um, Big, massive sound in Koyaanisqatsi that was like this was a big change for Philip to to do that.
Yeah. Mm. So, I mean, I've heard Philip Glass say that. I mean, after Einstein on the Beach, um, that his music, he wouldn't call his music minimalism anymore. So, how do you think that plays out, like with something like Koyaanisqatsi?
Well, I think that's true. That's exactly right. Because Koyaanisqatsi, as I said, it's approaching a, a classical composition in that, it has longer phrases that repeat, that are fully harmonic and contrapuntal, and aren't just based on these subtle structures anymore. It's a different kind of writing altogether. So yes, I would say that was beyond minimalism at that point. The only thing that remained of the minimalism is some of Philip's signature ideas, like using arpeggios. Um, that continues in Koyaanisqatsi. Um, and,
Yeah.
certain certain rhythmic ideas continue in Koyaanisqatsi. But no, you can't really call it minimalist anymore. It's not, there's nothing bare bones about it. It's fully fleshed out music in harmony and counterpoint.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I just know that like some people are confused about, yeah, just about that situation. Um, but yeah, like I understand that it's a more classical um way of composing, um, but there still is a lot of repeats of sections and things like that. So
Yes.
um I mean, why do you think that is, I guess? Why do you think he still uses uh um heavy amount of repeats?
Well, he he is coming out of this concept of repetition. He's not giving it up. He's just doing something different with it. He, you know, he's he's still fond of the power of repetition, how it can work, that you build and build and build on something, um, so that it becomes, you know, this, like this this scene in Koyaanisqatsi, I guess the most famous one. It's called The Grid. It's with all the traffic and fast moving people, and the frenetic life. Uh, the the imagery and the music combined, to basically to you know if the music was like, had too many abrupt changes in it, it wouldn't have the same kind of staying power. This piece goes on for like 17 minutes, and you know
Mm,
it doesn't have that many ideas. It has enough ideas that are repeated in variations. I mean, if you think of what his repeats are, not just repeats in Koyaanisqatsi. There are, no big sections that repeat. It's not like a classical sonata where you have the first half of a movement that's repeated and the second half. The repeats are all actually smaller chunks, um, that, you know, one repeat is sometimes very similar to the next section. One section is to the next, but there are subtle differences that, make it continually interesting. There are enough subtle differences that if you're listening carefully, say, oh, you will not, you'll know that it's not an exact repeat,
right,
but
right.
it's a quasi repeat. It's a variation. So that's what that's what the music becomes in his later works like Koyaanisqatsi and beyond. It becomes, instead of these small cells repeat, bigger bigger chunks repeat, and they are then varied, in their repeats,
Mm, mm,
variations.
right. Mm. Yeah, thank you for clearing that up. Um, uh, with his choice of harmony, um, I mean, I think this is another kind of tricky situation for some people. Is that sometimes it could be like choosing very simple voicings. I guess why do you think that that appears that appears in his music so much like simplistic voicings, and I mean oftentimes just reposition chords. Um, yeah, I don't know if you can answer that, but
Um, well, I'm not quite sure what period of music you're talking about, and Philip, are you
I
talking
mean,
about
uh,
solo piano pieces in particular?
yeah, yeah, and I guess in particular, yeah, like for instance uh Anima Mundi um piece, uh that the popular one, I forget what it's called, but um like that one has a lot of root position chords all over it, uh a repetition of that, and it's yeah, I'm just curious, what does that come out of? Is it the same kind of um repetitious background that he comes out of, that's just
Um,
keeping things simplistic?
I'm not sure why what you're talking about in Anima Mundi. Uh, my piano arrangement of it,
Yeah,
or
yeah, the piano arrangement.
oh, okay, yeah. I mean, that's that was written for an orchestra, and as a piano arrangement, you know, I did what I could to do the orchestra part, but
Right, right.
I don't see that. I mean, it's a kind of, I mean, it's kind of a complicated piece. The one on it's it's goes through an introduction and then a coda, and edited from three different pieces in Anima Mundi. So, but yeah, the end of it is yeah, it's very simple, and it's
Hmm.
I don't um, I find it curious you chose that piece as an example of something. I mean, let's talk about something like opening from Glassworks, for example, one of the most popular of his piano pieces. Um,
Yeah,
um, that's pretty simple um, in that it's basically just four different phrases and each repeated like three and a half, four times. I mean, with a little with the second ending. Um, um, with
yeah,
a continuous triplets in the right hand against duplets in the left hand that goes all the way through, um, and simple harmonies. But you know, it, it's it's a it's a successful and actually ultimately very popular piece that has been covered like by at least a dozen pianists at one time or another.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, um, it's
yeah, myself included.
uh, it's it's I don't know what I would say about it. It catches a certain tone, and it's simple, and you know I think Philip was trying in the Glassworks thing. He was trying to write pieces that weren't long, demanding, like in his,
Yeah.
music before that. He actually targeted an audience with that album of Glassworks, uh, encouraged by the record label, which was CBS Masterworks at the time and later became Sony. But he was encouraged by the record label to make a popular album. So that's kind of like what he thought of as, well, this could be popular music. It did turn out to be a very successful effort. Glassworks is still a
Yeah.
big a big thing. It's performed. We're doing it now. The ensemble is doing my ensemble arrangement of Glassworks because it wasn't originally written for the ensemble. Parts of it, two pieces were. Um,
Mm.
the Flow and Rubik pieces were written for the ensemble, but Islands, Facades, and Closing weren't written for the ensemble. But we do a version of them now that I arranged for the group. So, and that's a program that's a half of a program, one set of a program that's very much in demand, and we've been doing that quite a bit.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Uh, I guess talking about scores in general for the ensemble. I mean, I know that well, a lot of them aren't really available to the public.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah, so I wonder if you can explain that a little bit.
Well, we've wanted to keep music that was performed by the ensemble uh, just in our hands so that we don't have competition running around,
Mm.
like tribute bands or something playing Philip Glass ensemble pieces. So, um, you know, some of this music is, well, it's not been public because a lot of the, a lot of the music has been arranged by myself. A lot of the music, like the scores for Koyaanisqatsi or Koyaanisqatsi or Anima Mundi or anything else, things have been arranged by me for the ensemble or for myself, and I haven't published those. They're not available. So, and this is by design so that we can be the only people playing them. Now, there are people playing some of the pieces, like Glassworks is, you can rent Glassworks and perform it.
Mm.
And so people are doing that. Um, Music in 12 parts, well, we're kind of keeping that close to the chest at the moment. Um, there's only been one complete performance of it that I was aware of. It was done in England by a group with Robert McVinney at the helm. Um, but
Mm.
you know, I had objected to them doing that at the time, but it had been like negotiated, and so it was nothing. There's nothing I could say about it. But since then, we've insisted that the ensemble is the only group that
Yeah.
can play that music in 12 parts. Nobody else has rights to do it. So, yeah, and uh, uh, I think if we had not done that, that we wouldn't be working as much as we are because other people would be doing doing the pieces that they can have access to, and they can't do that. So
Yeah.
we get to do it. We're the only people getting to do it.
Mm-mm. Um, yeah, so as a, I mean, as a conductor, you've conducted a lot of his work, and I was kind of curious uh what is a piece for you that sticks out as a conductor?
Well, um, I I'm enjoying, I think, the most of all is conducting the films of the Qatsi trilogy in live performance with an orchestra and the ensemble. Um, we
Mm,
finally did the last of them, the Nakor Qatsi uh, edition of the Qatsis. We did an orchestral version with the ensemble of that last year for the first time. And this was, we did it in Europe. It has yet to be performed in the United States. But that is the most satisfying of the things that I've done. At least recently, I mean, Einstein, of course, that's exciting to do. Um, but we're not doing that anymore. I mean, not since the last tour shut down like 9 years ago. 2016, I think, was the last time we did that. Um, so,
mm.
I mean, I think back, well, things I've enjoyed conducting recordings of the film scores, a lot of them, but
Yeah.
that's always a different kind of work. I mean, it's kind of like recording sessions are always a bit of a chore, and it's never like just you're never just playing the music. It's always like
Right.
stopping and starting and repeating and dropping in and replacing and fixing. And so,
Yeah,
um,
and
you
like
know,
time limit and things like that.
time limits and yeah. So, I mean, it's a different kind of work. I guess I'd say as performance wise, yeah, doing the doing the Kotsis with orchestra. I mean, I've done some other films with orchestra. Uh, this film Visitors, I've done that with orchestra. I did that's a Godfrey Reggio film that was done after the Kotsis. Um, I did a live performance of The Fog of War with orchestra
Mm.
with the film, and that's a film that also has dialogue, a lot of it. Um, uh, but um, the Kotsis are really the most fun.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very unique pieces. Yeah, for sure. Um, so I guess I guess since we're talking about conducting, well, uh, what interested you about studying conducting?
Well, I guess I was, I was always wanted to be able to conduct, at least conduct my own work. And so
Mm,
I needed to study something of the craft of how to do that. And at Manus, I had the option to pursue a double major in composition and something else. It could have been piano, keyboard, but I chose conducting. Uh, there was a very good teacher of conducting there at the time, Carl Bamberger,
mm,
who really taught me a lot and made it possible for me when the opportunity came along after joining the ensemble to start conducting. Like there I was, and I knew how to do it. That the first opportunity came with Einstein on the Beach. We needed someone to conduct the chorus. I mean, I was playing as well, but um, the knee plays were done not with me playing; they were done just with the chorus. So they needed somebody to conduct that, and that was me. I was there,
mm.
so it was a natural thing that happened.
So
And then,
that was your first job as a conductor?
well, other than conducting some of my own music, which I did previously,
Mm,
I conducted. I wrote a piece called the Chamber Concerto, which I conducted at the Marlborough Festival and then with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. So I had done some conducting of my own music. My first
mm,
conducting of somebody else's music was conducting Einstein on the Beach,
wow.
and then the film score Koyaanisqatsi, conducting and recording that,
Mm, mm,
which was again a situation where you know he needed a conductor to conduct that film score, and there I was, and I was already kind of ostensibly the music director, so it was a natural thing for me to get that job. and all the other film jobs, almost all of them, through the next, like 20 years or so, um,
mm,
right up into his Hollywood period of conducting scores like uh, Kundun or The Truman Show or, No Reservations, Secret Window, Taking Lives, uh,
yeah.
all these Hollywood films. The Hours, of course. Now, The Hours I didn't get to conduct. There was some problem because it was financed in England, and they said, well, they needed a British conductor, although
Mm,
that turned out not to be true. So later on, the film called Notes on a Scandal, which was also conducted, was also recorded in England, I was able to be the conductor of that.
mm, mm,
But um, yeah, pretty much. I mean, I conducted just about everything, all of his scores. What I didn't do is conduct the symphonies or the operas. Those were people who were connected to whatever the organization was that was doing the performing.
yeah.
So I
Yeah.
never got my foot in the door at places like that to be able to conduct, at an opera house or conduct another orchestra.
Mm. So
So,
what's the I mean I've heard uh just from searching on the internet of that some conductors say that it's difficult music to conduct. Um, I was wondering, yeah, if you had anything to say about that. I mean, is it difficult for you or?
well, it's difficult in two ways. Um, First of all, it's difficult to get the orchestra to play with the precision and timing that we have come to expect with the Philip Glass Ensemble. You
Mm,
know, the orchestras tend to be a bit sloppy with like the brass is always a little late, and uh,
mhm,
it, to try to achieve the level of synchronicity that I would like, it's hard. You have to work on the players and get them to understand what it is they're expected to do in terms of precision. Um,
mm,
uh, we run into this we do versions of the Katsis with the ensemble and orchestra, and to get them to keep up with us, to keep in time, to keep together, or to get a chorus to stay together. Yeah, it's a challenge. Of course, the other thing is a challenge. Um, it's easy to get lost if you're not counting, keeping your place,
mm,
because there are these repeats, and you've got to be on your toes and make sure you take all the repeats correctly. So it's
yeah.
challenging in both of those ways.
Mm, mm, mm. Um, okay, so how how like on a more specific level, I guess, how do you um I guess if a certain section in the orchestra is not rhythmically there, how do you get them to step it in? I mean, I know it's more of like a case by case basis, but uh, can you give an example?
Well, you have to like coax them, cajole them a little bit, explain to them what the situation is. It's like we need this kind of precision. You have to tell them that they've got to not play the way they usually do. They've got to like advance their timing a little bit, for example, if the brass section is late. Um,
Mm,
uh, but there's a great variation among orchestras. Some orchestras catch on right away. I remember I had an experience. We did Koyaanisqatsi in Budapest,
mm,
and I went to the first rehearsal with the orchestra. This is the orchestra with the ensemble. I went to the first rehearsal of the orchestra, and um, I was practically in tears when they played. the grid from Koyaanisqatsi. I said, that's amazing. That's the best I've ever heard of a first run for an orchestra. It's really, you guys are terrific, you know. But other groups,
Wow.
I'm like, please, can we try to like advance it a little bit and be a little bit more on time, you know, that I don't want to have to like beat a full bar ahead, you know. You should be with me, you know, not behind me. And so
Mm-mm.
it's a struggle with I mean, boy, we did it with this Santa Cecilia Orchestra in Italy, a very fine orchestra. But why were those brass players ever and continually on the late side, even in the concert? I mean, I just could not.
Mm.
I mean, we had an additional problem there. It was during COVID, and they had spread the orchestra out, so everybody's kind of far apart,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and you know, um, made it even worse, made it even harder. Uh, you know, I mean, it was a version of Koyaanisqatsi, but it wasn't didn't have the exactness. But other orchestras, like I've did it with the L.A. Phil and New York Philharmonic. They were both great too.
Mm-mm.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, they got it. They got it. They appreciated what they were doing, and yeah, they understood how it's supposed to work. Yeah.
Mm-mm. Yes. So what made you um dedicate uh a lot of your career to the music of Philip Glass, of playing in it and conducting it?
Well, to be truthful, I had to make a living, you know, and my work as a composer was not earning much money. I mean, I went spent a little time trying to be a commercial composer. I actually worked doing TV commercials for a bit. My work as a creative composer, there just wasn't income coming in as that, and you know, I got this job with Philip, and it was like it wasn't a full-time job by any means, but it was a consistent job. And it went on, you know, he did something very clever when I started working with him at the beginning.
Mm.
He did um, maybe 12 weeks worth of work a year or 10. But
Mm.
what he did was he spread out the salaries of the group to reach 20 weeks. And what is important about that was if you had 20 weeks of work, and he was paying high enough wages that, in fact, it could be spread out. I mean, he was paying above like scale wages. He always
Mm.
paid well. Uh, if he spread it out to 20 weeks of work, then everybody in the group could collect unemployment insurance
Mm. Mm.
for another 20 weeks. And that would help us along, get through the year. And it certainly provided um, provided for everybody's welfare in the group. Uh, but it did one thing beyond that too. It was a very smart move on his part. It provided loyalty. The people would stay. You know, they
Mm.
wouldn't
Mm.
drift off and go somewhere else and do something else because this was a steady gig for everybody. If it wasn't full time, I mean, everybody was doing other things in the group. I mean, a lot of creative people came through that group who were doing their own kinds of work as composers or visual artists or whatever. Uh,
Mm.
Working in other areas of music, like Dickie Landry played jazz. Andrew Sturman, who's now with the group, I mean, he plays all kinds of things from Broadway to recording dates all over. Richard Peck played in he played in a funk band. John Gibson did his own composing his art painted
Mm.
works. Um, Joan LaBarbera, who was at the time the singer early in the group, I mean,
Mm.
she did her own kind of work as well and left to do that. Lisa Belava, who's our current singer, she's also a composer. I mean, almost everybody in the group was. was creative in music as a composer, or doing something other than just being a performer. So um, yeah, but this group stayed together. I mean, there's very little turnover through the years of people leaving and other people coming in. Um, so for me, it just got to be busier and busier. Uh, First, it was just doing performances for the ensemble, and then it was doing recordings with Koyaanisqatsi and other film scores. And then it was doing arrangements of those recordings or other things for the ensemble. And then I got involved in producing albums and working in the studio as from that side of the thing, as as conductor, engineer, producer kind of thing. I did the thing with the many of the film scores I conducted. I actually conducted from the control room with my hand
Mm.
on the tape machine buttons.
Oh, wow.
Um, because I couldn't trust somebody else to do the kind of tricky punching in I wanted, especially on the analog days when you had to punch a little bit early to be
Mm.
precise, because you were listening to the playback head, but you had to drop in on the record head, which is, came ahead. Well, anyway, it's a long
Yeah.
story, but it was a tricky business. So um, I remember the last time I worked, we were recording the film score Mishima. It was the last score where I actually was running back and forth between the control room and the studio conducting. And I said, you know what, this doesn't make sense. I should just conduct from the control room.
Mm.
And the next time we did a film score, that's what I did. And I did it ever since then, all the way through my career conducting films. I was conducting from the control room.
Mm. Wow, wow.
I
Um,
turned the orchestra around and faced the control room
mm, mm, mm,
instead of facing the podium was the control room.
mm, mm. Oh, so
Conduct through the glass, and I'd move right up next to the glass in the
mm.
front of the console, in front of the console, and have a tape remote right next to me.
So you're the only one that has the vision of the film, like with the screen of the film playing.
Well, we did that in the only in the later things did we actually record to picture
Mm. Oh, you
some
didn't
of the
record to picture.
Hollywood. No, we just recorded to a click track, which we had made. And there's a demo, we made demo tracks uh, for any of the films. There was always a demo track. The demo track had the click track. And after once you've created the click track, then you can just record to that. You don't need the film anymore. Um, However, there were certain directors, producers, they wanted to watch the film while while we're recording. So it was always set up that there was a film playing for them to watch. Um,
Mm, mm,
for the recordings I did in England, uh, recordings. Most of the time, just trying to think. Most of the time, directors didn't come to our recording sessions. I think the exception was The Hours, Notes on a Scandal, when Scott Rudin, who was a producer, insisted on being at every recording session and staying through to the end of each recording session. He was so concerned about the music being right.
mm, mm,
And he, more than the director, was the one. The director was busy doing other things. So was Scott Rudin, producer, who attended all the sessions. And he wanted to see exactly how the scene played with the film, um, and made comments about it. And wanted maybe do another take for something that he wanted done differently. Um,
mm, mm,
but most of the time, we did recordings without the director present, and you know, then they would turn up when we did the mixing,
mm.
and we'd be in a film studio or mixing in our own home studio sometimes, doing the pre-mix for the film. The directors would show up then. That's
Okay.
when they would get the first look at what we're dealing with.
Mm, mm,
Uh, yeah, so yeah, most film recording that's done in LA in particular, they're set up on a scoring stage and they have a screen and the conductor is dealing with click tracks and streamers and whatever
Ye-
to be stay in sync with the film. So
yeah, yeah. Um, and not even like Scorsese for like Kundun. He didn't show up for the recording session.
no, he didn't.
Mm,
No.
mm, mm, mm.
He commented, however, on all the demos that we delivered, and you know, and then on the finals also he had comments. We did a little re-recording of things, reworking of things, that he wasn't too happy with. I mean, did we actually do any re-recording? Well, maybe. But anyway, I mean, he was very particular about what he wanted. Um, um,
Mm,
and he didn't have much of a language to discuss it, but he knew when it was right. And, we tried to satisfy him.
mm. What sort of comments would you say if you can I don't know, give an example?
Well, just an example. We did a demo of one of the sections from Kundun. It's a piece called Chinese Invade. It's a very beautiful flute line. It goes just a simple arpeggio, like that. And I recorded the demo with one of my favorite New York flutists, Carl Winston's. And then it came time to do the final recording. Well, the tempo got changed in the process of between slightly slower in the final version.
Mm,
This kind of thing that happens all the time in the film world. The director changes the cut of the scene. What are you going to do? Well, okay, if it's just a little bit, well, you could slow it down a little bit and make it still fit.
mm, mm.
So I did, and then we came to do the final, and I decided to bring Carol Winston back in and have her re-record it.
Yeah. Mm,
And Scorsese heard it, and he said, "That's not the same recording." I said, "I want that same flute. It's not as emotional." And he was right, actually. The first recording was better. So what I had to do was take the first recording. It was close enough in tempo that I didn't actually need to stretch it because there were rests. It would play a few phrases and rest. So I was able just to take it and lay it in, and it stayed close enough in time that it worked and satisfied him. But he was very perceptive about something like that, a subtle change that, you know, on the album version, I think we used the later version, but he was right that the early one was actually better. I mean, the album version is nice too, but it's a subtle difference.
mm, mm.
He
Yeah.
was, he wanted another thing, like he wanted a certain event to happen at a certain time. Where there was another scene during while the Chinese are invading. It's not the piece called Chinese Invade, but it's uh, it's during this battle,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and he wanted a certain um, trombone entrance to be at a certain moment in the film.
Mm,
I know. I guess it was the Chinese Invade. That's right. Yeah, the Chinese Invade, which is it's a passacaglia, which means the bass line stays the same through the whole piece, and just is repeated over and over again. Um,
mm,
so it's like the phrase. It's like a 4-bar phrase goes through the whole thing.
mm, mm.
Um, and then over that 4-bar phrase of the bass line, there's uh, variations of a trombone part and a flute part and so on.
Yeah.
Well, he
Mm, mm.
wanted that trombone to hit at a certain moment. And there's no way we could have it start where he wanted and have that event happen where he wanted without destroying the form of the piece. And basically, this is this is unacceptable. You couldn't, you get locked into the harmonic rhythm, the repeating pattern. You just couldn't do it. You just can't chop it there. He said, it's
Yeah.
got to happen there. So
Mm.
I worked with there's a music editor that worked on that thing, trying to make him happy and trying to make us not unhappy. And what they came up with was there's like wind blowing.
Mm.
At one point, the wind comes and obliterates the music. The wind dials up. And then when the music comes back in, you don't realize that it's not in the same place.
Mm.
And that's how we got by that place. So anyway, that was one of
Wow.
the to another story about Scorsese. The I think it's the same piece actually. The Chinese Invade piece has a big trombone solo, and there's big trombone solo, flute solo. This same thing, the same Pascalia, the bass. Well, so the demo was done with a sample of a trombone,
Mm.
a bass trombone, and it's very sustained and even,
Yeah.
And then we brought in the real trombone, and the real trombone, and it didn't sound anything like the bass trombone sample. It had breaths and a little wavering in pitch and all the things that real trombone players do.
Yeah.
And Scorsese said, "No, I don't want that. I like the way it was." And
Mm. Mm.
I said, "Well, I'm not going to throw out a real trombone." But I came up with a solution was that I used auto tune on the
Mm.
real trombone and mixed it in with the sample trombone. So you got the best of both worlds. He got the sustained thing, and I was satisfied that it sounded enough like a real trombone, even though it wasn't real anymore. But it was enough of it was a real trombone.
Mm. Mm.
Made us both happy. But
Wow. Yeah.
that's that's there's a thing that's used in the film world, a phrase called temp love, where the director falls in love with the temp track or the demo track, whichever. Sometimes a temp track could be a piece of music that's not uh, anything that the composer is writing, is something else.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and sometimes the director says, "No, I don't like what you wrote. I want the temp track." Well,
Mm.
I can give you an example of that in the film um, Truman Show.
Mm.
Peter Weir, the director, he was using music from Koyaanisqatsi, among other things, as his temp track.
Mm.
And Philip then wrote a piece like a piece from Koyaanisqatsi. And Peter Weir said, "No, I don't like that. It's not as good." And Philip said, "Well, I can't, write an imitation of myself that's better than the original. So just use the original." So that's what they did. They music from Truman Show was actually almost none of it was written for Truman Show. It was written for something else and
Mm.
borrowed. Um,
Wow.
and they brought in then another composer to write some Truman Show theme music, which is why Philip Glass is credited as additional music by, because he said, "Well, I don't want credit for writing this other stuff." So anyway, that's how that
Mm.
worked out. He wrote one piece for Truman Show called "Raising the Sail," which is a beautiful piece for piano strings and with a big French horn part. And
Yeah. It's a beautiful piece.
but it uh, only part of it got used.
Oh.
And on the album, then I had no control over the album, and they chopped it off just before the piano comes in. Oh boy, that was a disappointment.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, histories from the film world uh, of you know nice things and some not so nice things. It's
Yeah.
it's a tough business that you have to accommodate the director or the producer or both, and some things don't work out.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Sorry, I feel like I have to ask this question, but did you work on the Woody Allen film Cassandra's
Yes,
Dream?
I
Uh,
did. Yeah, I conducted it.
mm-mm.
Uh-huh.
So what was that like with like Woody Allen?
I never met him.
Oh, you
He
never met
never
him?
showed up at any of the dates or the mixing or anything. Yeah,
Mm-mm.
yeah. I
Oh,
know Philip met with him a couple of times, but he's a very secretive guy. Uh, and anyway, that's the way that went.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's a wonderful score. Um,
I'm surprised actually. I see that I have a an Apple Music for Artists login. I can see which of the things I've worked on are getting played on Apple Music.
mm-mm,
And I'm always surprised that Cassandra's Dream keeps turning up. It seems to be a pretty popular score, parts of it.
mm-mm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I haven't listened to it, I don't think, since I recorded it. I've hardly listened to it. Maybe I'll go back and see what's good about it. I remember the recording very well.
Yeah.
You-
Um, yeah. Sorry, were you gonna say something about that or?
no,
Oh, okay.
just yeah, it was one of the
Yeah.
ones where I was working in through the control room in a studio on 48th Street.
Mm. So as a conductor, what is it, or what kind of what's the experience like conducting Philip Glass's music? Like what do you feel when you're doing it?
Well, we were talking about live performance like Koyaanisqatsi or something like that. That's
Yeah.
one thing. Yeah, it's a thrill. I mean, you've got a big orchestra and they're making a big sound. In the case of Koyaanisqatsi, I've got like usually 80 voices in a chorus also, as well as this 16-piece brass section. I mean,
Mm.
it's a thrill as make this big sound.
Or is the experience much different from being a performer, from performing it, like performing the music versus conducting it?
Um,
Or does it feel like you're like one group?
it's not that different performing versus conducting. Of course, performing, I'm, actually working harder with my hands,
Yeah.
but it's the same kind of concentration as far as listening and, you know, listening and concentrating. The same kind of work. You know.
Mm. As the musical director of Philip Glass Ensemble, uh, is it is it is there things asked of you that are like kind of um not typical, or like what's it like being having that position?
Well, music director is responsible for a number of things. I say one of the important things is personnel. Uh, I've been responsible for hiring and firing players, basically since Philip kind of gave me the job of musical director. So we're talking going back quite a few years. Um,
Yeah.
that's one thing. Repertoire is the next thing. I'm responsible for deciding what pieces we're going to play as the ensemble. Arrangements is the third thing that I'm doing, which is when Philip has written something new that we need to adapt for the ensemble, then I'm responsible for making that arrangement. Um, and um, then actually running rehearsals. That's the
Yeah.
last stage of being the music director. deciding how to, manage the time pressure on a sound check rehearsal day where we load in, do a sound check, and play a show that night, which is what mostly we do nowadays. We don't, we rarely have separate rehearsal days for anything. Um, Only when we're doing new pieces like we did for the new Koyaanisqatsi with orchestra and the Koyaanisqatsi with orchestra, we had separate rehearsal days for those with the orchestra. Um,
Mm.
and but and when we were working up recently performance of music in 12 parts, when we had new player come in the last couple of years since John Gibson died in
Yeah.
2020. Um, we've had a new player come in. Um, so I've had rehearsals at my home studio uh, with the wind players, so they would be able to rehearse music in full parts to get the hang of it, before we hit a stage. So, um, but a full rehearsal with the ensemble with a full sound setup, no, we haven't done that in a long time. Uh, it's always, under the pressure of a sound check rehearsal before a concert, and sometimes with guest musicians who've never played it. But what I do in the case of that is, we've had like recent trips to Europe. We've wanted to save money on airfares and bringing people over for the additional players that we use for Koyaanisqatsi for the ensemble, for example, uses 5 keyboard players. Well, there are only 3 of us in the group, so we need 2 more.
Mm.
So we hired people locally in Holland for concerts in Holland and sent them music and also a rehearsal tape, which is the exact soundtrack as we're going to perform it. So they can rehearse with the soundtrack with all the proper cuts. If they played the album, it wouldn't be right. The albums are all cut down. So they've had to have I've made rehearsal tapes with broken up into small segments so they can rehearse sections. This starts at such and such a rehearsal number in this piece and so on. And they can start there and play that. So they can work it by themselves. And then we put it together. It's worked out fine. I mean, these people are professional players. They get it. They like the music. Obviously, they're not involved if they don't come somehow from friends that say, "Oh, they'd love to do it." So
Mm.
this has worked out for us. Um, anyway, that's always an issue of managing your time in a soundtrack rehearsal. Uh, Important job of the music director.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Fighting for time to rehearse versus time for the sound mixers to do their job, you know.
Mm.
And well, we managed to work it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely had a lot of recent experience with that. Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult, sound check. Um, but um, what do you think of what do you think of t I mean, I know today like there's the term post minimalism. Like what do you think of those like newer composers like Max Richter and like Johann Johansson, uh, some of these newer people making similar music to Philip Glass and maybe Steve Reich, but yeah.
Well, I've heard some of Max Richter. I think it's good. The other one you mentioned, I'm not actually paying a lot of attention to what's going on. I'm involved now in doing some more music of my own, and
Yeah.
I'm not, you know, I haven't heard anything that really grabs me. Uh, I don't think, I mean, um, John Adams, of course, he's part of the older generation too, but he's
Mm.
somebody who I've admired as well from a distance. I knew him when at Harvard. He was there when I was there. We became friends there, and we've stayed in touch over the years. I saw him just recently at the New York Philharmonic when
Mm,
they did Philip's Symphony 12. But um, I'd have to say I'm not out there looking for the next new thing. I'm not paying attention
right.
very much. I'm pretty much, when I listen to stuff, I like to listen to a lot of old stuff, actually, some classical music, some like rock and roll and blues and
Yeah.
rhythm and blues and that kind of stuff. Stuff that stuff that I listened to when I was in college and high school and college and after that, that stuff has stayed enjoyable to me
Mm.
to live with.
For my last question, I wanted to ask about the music. I mean, I know it's an art installation, but the music of Reanimated
Uh-huh.
project you were part of.
Yes.
Um, so I just want to know what musically what was that like going into that work? Because it's a very different kind of music. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Well, it was very, it was something done with the purpose of, you know, the purpose of accompanying this virtual world that was created by the artists. Uh, the intention of it was to um, have a computer doing it live uh, in such a way that it would be different every time. Um, as it
Mm,
turned out, the demands, computational demands, were too great, and we ended up doing the art show itself with a recording. Um, and then I decided to release the recording as an album. It was not exactly what was on the wasn't the same thing that was on the actual art show, but something that I just worked on. I said, well, let me put this together as a version of it and put it out there. And it was released on vinyl first, and then they said, well, let's get the digital version up there and help sell the vinyl. I said, okay. So that's why that's available. Um,
mm, mm,
but um, if there's one piece that I'd like to push a little bit, it's this old piece of mine called Formal Abandon
mm,
that has two movements, a quartet and octet. It's available on Apple Music. I'm not sure where else it is. Maybe Spotify. I don't really keep track of it. But anyway, that's a piece that I'd like people to listen to of the kind of thing that I was into back in, you know, the the early in the 80s when I wrote that piece. Um, and that's really the one thing that's available right now of my earlier music that I'd like to mention.
mm,
A
mm.
lot of stuff has just never been made available. Some of the pieces never got recorded, never got released. So,
Yeah, yeah. Right. Um, well, I mean, what was like some of the classical composers you're interested in?
well, I still play Mozart and Schubert and Beethoven. Um, those Schumann, those are my favorites, I guess.
Mm,
Bach, that's what I play at home. I have the volume sitting on my piano and pull them out and play some of that music. Uh, Chopin as well.
mm,
That's as far as piano music. But I mean, if I go to hear an orchestra concert, well, I love to going to hear some Stravinsky and some other 20th century music. I mean, I'm a big fan of early 20th century Ravel, Debussy, um,
Mm,
composer like Scriabin, Satie. I appreciate. I mean, there's a lot of music I like to listen to. Um, that's you know not so much later 20th century, early 20th century.
mm, mm. It's been, great talking to you. Um, I can't, express how much gratitude I feel for having the opportunity to speak with you. Um, and yeah, it's been great. Thank
Well,
you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Pleasure for me to think over some of the things that you asked questions about. So,
Mm. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you all later. Thank you everyone for watching. I just want to say a couple things before you go. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below because that really helps me keep making these videos. And also support me on Patreon. You'll get some free stuff and a bunch of other stuff on there. So please go over there and check it out for yourself. It was a real pleasure to have Michael Riesman on. It's one of the guests I was really hoping to talk to and was very surprised that he accepted my invitation. So it's really thrilling for me to talk to him in this episode, as you witnessed. So thank you everyone, and until the next one.